The cavernous living room of the winter mansion felt like a tomb, the crystal chandeliers hanging like frozen tears. Just an hour ago, this space had been filled with the forced laughter of a wedding anniversary party Sylvia never wanted. Now, it was a courtroom, and she was the only one on trial. It was a lie, Evan, all of it. Sylvia's voice cracked, raw with desperation. She gestured toward the woman curled on the velvet sofa. Yvonne did this to herself. She fell on purpose. Evan Winter didn't even look at her. His attention was fixed on Yvonne, his supposed best friend, who leaned into his side. A pristine white bandage wrapped around her wrist. Her face, usually a mask of saccharine sweetness, was now pale and artfully tear-streaked. She looked like a wounded bird, and Sylvia, the predator. Enough. Sylvia, Evan's voice was a blade of ice, cutting through the heavy silence. I'm tired of your jealousy. A side door opened, and Logan, one of the junior executives at Evan's company and Yvonne's loyal shadow, stepped forward, his head bowed. Mr. Winter, I have to confess. A flicker of hope ignited in Sylvia's chest. The truth. Finally, Logan wrung his hands, his eyes darting guiltily toward Yvonne before settling on the floor. I pushed her. I was angry about something she said. He took a shaky breath and looked directly at Sylvia, his expression hardening into an accusation. But it was Sylvia who put me up to it. She told me to hurt Yvonne, to make it look like an accident. She said if I did, she'd secure a promotion for me. The hope in Sylvia's chest turned to acid. What? No, that's insane. The world tilted, the ornate patterns on the Persian rug swimming before her eyes. It was a lie so audacious, so perfectly constructed, that it was impenetrable. She saw the final shutter of doubt close in Evan's eyes, replaced by a cold, resolute fury. You would stoop this low, he whispered, his voice dangerously soft. He straightened up, his towering frame casting a long shadow over her. You would orchestrate an attack on her. In my home, on our anniversary. He didn't ask. It was a verdict. Guards, terror, sharp and absolute, seized her. Evan, no, you have to believe me. She's been poisoning you against me from the start. Two men in severe black suits moved from the shadows of the hallway. They seized her arms in punishing grips, their touch impersonal and bruising. The fabric of her dress tore slightly at the shoulder. Let go of me, she screamed, struggling against them. Her eyes were locked on her husband's. Evan, please, don't do this. He watched, his handsome face an unreadable mask of granite. He didn't flinch. He didn't even breathe. As the guards dragged her backward across the polished marble floor, her heels scraping uselessly, Yvonne lifted her head from Evan's shoulder. Her eyes, filled with triumphant venom, met Sylvia's. Did you really think he'd ever choose you? Yvonne mouthed, a smug, cruel smile touching her lips for a fraction of a second before she buried her face back into Evan's chest with a pathetic sob. He was always mine. The world went dark. Sylvia awoke to the sterile smell of antiseptic and the rhythmic beep of a machine. A thin, grey blanket was pulled up to her chin. A doctor, a woman with tired eyes and a clinical expression, stood at the foot of her hospital bed, reviewing a chart. You collapsed from extreme stress, Mrs. Winter, the doctor said, her tone flat. But there's something else. You're pregnant. Approximately 8 weeks. The words didn't register first. Pregnant. A baby. A tiny, impossible spark of light in the crushing darkness. A tear slid down her temple and into her hair. It was Evan's child, their child. Maybe this would change everything. However, the doctor continued, her brow furrowed. Your system is extremely weak. Your blood pressure is dangerously low. If you want any chance of carrying this baby to term, you must avoid any further stress. The door clicked open, and Yvonne swept in, her arm now in a stylish silk sling. The vulnerable act was gone, replaced by an aura of vindictive power. She dismissed the doctor with a flick of her wrist. "I heard the news," Ivan said, her voice a purr. She glided to the bedside, looking down at Sylvia with false pity. "A baby? How inconvenient, especially now." She sighed dramatically. "The doctors have told me after the trauma of my attack, the shock as well, it's caused complications. They say I may never be able to have children of my own." Sylvia stared at her, the lie so monstrous it was almost brilliant. Just then, Evan entered the room, his presence sucking the air from it. He stood beside Ivan, his hand resting protectively on her shoulder. He didn't look at Sylvia, who was still reeling from the news of their child. "Evan," Sylvia's voice was a hoarse whisper. "The doctor, I am pregnant." She looked at him, her eyes pleading, searching for a trace of the man she had married. "We're having a baby." He finally met her gaze, and what she saw there destroyed her. There was no joy, no surprise, only cold contempt. He believed it was another trick. "Ivan needs a uterine transplant to have any hope of a family," Evan stated, his voice devoid of emotion. "A sacrifice is required." The implication was a physical blow. "No," Sylvia gasped, her hand flying to her flat stomach. "You can't, Evan. It's your child." "My child," he laughed. A short, ugly sound. "Or another one of your desperate ploys for attention. You will do this, Sylvia. You will atone for what you did to her." He pointed a finger at the floor beside her bed. Kneel and agree to the surgery. And maybe I'll let you keep that thing you're carrying." It was a choice between one horror and another. Sobbing, her body trembling uncontrollably, she slid from the bed, her thin hospital gown offering no protection against the cold linoleum. On her knees, she was nothing. "Please, Evan," she begged, tears streaming down her face. "Don't do this. Don't take our baby from me. I'll do anything else. Anything." "It's too late for that," he said, and moved. He pulled out his phone, his thumb hovering over a contact. "Your father's business is already hanging by a thread. One call from me, and he loses everything. He'll be on the street." "Sylvia, is that what you want? To destroy him, too?" The final piece of the trap snapped shut. Her father. They had left her no escape. The fight drained out of her, leaving a hollow, echoing void. She looked up at the man she once loved, the father of her unborn child, and saw only a monster. She lowered her head in defeat, her hair falling around her face like a shroud. "I'll do it," she whispered, the words tasting like poison. "I'll have the surgery." She lifted her eyes, ensuring he saw the pure, undiluted hatred that now burned where her love had once been. "That I will hate you for the rest of my life." 5 years ago, the sterile white of the prison hospital room was a stark canvas for Sylvia's agony. Her screams tore through the silence, each one a raw testament to the betrayal that had landed her here. The fluorescent lights hummed a merciless tune overhead as a new wave of pain ripped through her, forcing an arch in her back. Sweat plastered strands of dark hair to her temples, and her knuckles were white from gripping the cold metal bed rails. Miles away, in the glass-walled austerity of his office, Evan Winter listened to the frantic report from his assistant, "Mr. Winter, she's in labor." At the prison infirmary, Evan's jaw tightened, his gaze fixed on the rain-streaked city below. The image of Ivan, tearful and bruised, flashed in his mind, the damning evidence that had sealed Sylvia's fate. "My child," he said, his voice a shard of ice, "does not need a murderer for a mother." With a sharp click, he ended the call, severing the last thread of connection to the woman who had shattered his world. Back in the infirmary, a final, desperate cry was swallowed by the arrival of a new, fragile wail. A baby boy, through the shimmering haze of exhaustion and pain. Sylvia's eyes fluttered open, My baby, she gasped, her voice barely a whisper. Please, let me see him. It was the only hope that had kept her alive for 10 agonizing months, the promise of holding her son. But the door swung open, and Evan stood there, his face an unreadable mask of granite. He didn't look at her, only at the nurse cradling the swaddled infant. Take him, he commanded, his voice devoid of any emotion. She is not to see him, not ever. The words were a physical blow. Sylvia's breath hitched, a sob catching in her throat as the nurse, avoiding her pleading eyes, turned and carried her son away. The warmth, the life she had nurtured inside her, was gone. A profound emptiness bloomed in its place, cold and vast. She watched the door close, her arms still outstretched, her fingers grasping at nothing. A dark, warm pool began to spread beneath her on the white sheets. Evan Winter, she whispered, her voice cracking with a venomous hatred that burned hotter than her pain. I will hate you for eternity, then. Her world dissolved into blackness. A short while later, a doctor approached Evan in the sterile corridor. Mr. Winter, he began, his expression grim. I'm sorry, we lost her. The postpartum hemorrhage was too severe. Behind Evan, Ivan, who had arrived just in time to witness the fallout, brought a hand to her mouth in feigned shock. But her eyes, shielded from his view, held a chilling, triumphant glint. Lost her, Evan's composure finally cracked. The words didn't make sense. He spun on the doctor. What do you mean? You lost her? Show me, I need to see her. That won't be possible, the doctor said, producing a clipboard. She signed a body donation agreement weeks ago, as per her final wishes. The arrangements were immediate. Evan stared at the signature on the form, Sylvia's familiar, elegant script. It was a final, irrefutable seal on his nightmare. She was gone. 5 years later, Evan awoke with a jolt, the ghost of Sylvia's final, hate-filled whisper echoing in the cavernous silence of his bedroom. The sheets were tangled around his legs, his heart hammering against his ribs. Another nightmare, Yvonne murmured beside him, her voice thick with sleep. She draped an arm across his chest. You have to let her go, Evan. She's gone. He pushed her arm away, rising from the bed and striding toward the window. I'm fine, he clipped, staring out at the dawn breaking over the city. But he wasn't. The guilt, a phantom limb, ached with a constancy he could never admit. Later that morning, at the prestigious preparatory school, 5-year-old Ryan Winter stood slightly apart from the other children at his kindergarten graduation, dressed in a miniature cap and gown. He clutched the small diploma, his eyes scanning the sea of smiling, proud parents. His father was late, as usual, and Yvonne had a charity luncheon. He felt a familiar pang of loneliness. Tucked inside his pocket was a worn, folded photograph, a picture of a woman with a kind smile, and eyes that looked just like his secret treasure. He searched the crowd for that smile, a foolish hope fluttering in his small chest. Suddenly, the squeal of tires cut through the cheerful chatter. A red ball bounced into the street, and Ryan, reacting on pure instinct, chased after it. He didn't see the black car speeding around the corner. A woman screamed, but before the vehicle could reach him, a figure moved like lightning, sweeping him off his feet and pulling him back onto the curb in a whirlwind of expensive perfume and soft fabric. Sylvia held the trembling boy tight against her, her heart pounding with a terror so fierce it stole her breath. She knelt, her hands framing his face, checking him for any injury. Are you okay? You have to be more careful. Her voice was unsteady, thick with a love she had been forced to suppress for 5 long years. Ryan stared up at her, his big, dark eyes wide with shock, then dawning recognition. He looked from her face to the creased photo he'd pulled from his pocket, the smile, the eyes. It was her. Mum, he breathed, his voice filled with a child's unwavering certainty. "You're my mum." Sylvia's carefully constructed composure fractured. A sob caught in her throat, but she forced it down, shaking her head. "No, sweetie, you're mistaken. I'm not. They look exactly alike." A woman whispered to her friend nearby, both of them staring at the striking resemblance between the elegant stranger and the little boy. "The eyes are identical." Ryan's small hand reached up to touch her cheek. "It is you," he insisted, his jaw pure and absolute. "I knew you'd come." Tears pricked at Sylvia's eyes. She couldn't break his heart, but she couldn't risk everything now. She leaned in close, her voice a conspiratorial whisper. "Listen to me. It has to be our little secret, okay? If you don't tell your dad you saw me, I promise I'll come see you again." Ryan nodded eagerly, his face bright with the promise. "I won't tell. I promise." "Mom." Just then, Evan's car pulled up. He stepped out, his expression a mixture of apology and anxiety. "Ryan, I'm so sorry I'm late." His eyes scanned the area, landing on the back of a woman in a chic trench coat walking quickly away from his son. There was something in her posture, in the elegant line of her silhouette, that struck a chord of profound, unsettling familiarity. He shook his head, dismissing the fleeting sensation as a trick of the light. She was just another parent. He had a son to console. The city lights of Serenity Bay bled into streaks of gold and silver through the tinted windows of Noah's car. Sylvia stared out, her reflection a ghostly overlay against the sprawling metropolis she once called home. Her new office, a monument of glass and steel signifying her rebirth as the design world's enigmatic white fox, was a distant silhouette in the rearview mirror. 5 years, she murmured, her voice a low hum against the car's quiet engine. 5 years I spent planning this. Sometimes, the only thing that kept me going was the thought of their faces when I returned. Noah, his hands steady on the wheel, glanced at her. His friendship had been the one constant, a lighthouse in the storm of her fate, death, and reinvention. And Evan, he asked softly, treading on fragile ground. "Any part of you still?" Sylvia's gaze sharpened, cutting through the haze of memory. "Dear Evan I loved died in that prison cell with our child." The words were ice, each one a perfectly formed shard of grief and resolve. "The man who wears his face now is just a target, the CEO of the Everest Group. Nothing more." Her fingers curled into a fist, the knuckles white. She was a weapon forged in betrayal, and her sheath was a fragile shell of composure. Noah nodded, accepting the finality in her tone. "Good," he said, his voice firm with loyalty, "because I'm with you, all the way. Whatever it takes to burn their world to the ground. I'll hand you the matches." He reached into the passenger side compartment and pulled out a heavy, cream-colored envelope embossed with a familiar, stylized mountain peak. "Speaking of which, this is your invitation to the fire." Sylvia took the card. The Everest Group logo gleamed under the ambient streetlights. It was an invitation to their annual masquerade gala and wine tasting, an exclusive event for their most valued partners and, more importantly, prospective new ones. It was the perfect stage. A slow, dangerous smile touched her lips, but it never reached her eyes. They held a brilliant, chilling gleam of determination. "It's time for the white fox to go hunting." Hours later, the woman who was once Sylvia Thorne had vanished, replaced by an ethereal vision of vengeance. Her gown was the color of fresh snow, a stark column of silk that pulled at her feet. It was deceptively simple, designed to draw the eye upward to the masterpiece she wore on her face. An intricate, custom-made mask of polished white lacquer and silver filigree, shaped into the cunning visage of a fox. It covered the upper half of her face, leaving only her determined mouth and sharp jawline visible. She wasn't just wearing a costume. She was donning armor, embodying the persona that had clawed its way to the top of European design. In his penthouse overlooking the bay, Evan Winter adjusted the knot of his black silk tie. Ivan, draped in a garish, ruby red gown, fussed over his lapels, her touch lingering. "You're sure you want me to handle the preliminary talks for the new resort project, darling?" she asked, her voice a sweet, cloying melody. "It's such a huge responsibility." Evan gave her a distracted smile, his mind already on quarterly reports and market projections. "I trust you, Ivan. You've been my rock these past 5 years." He had no idea the rock he leaned on was the very stone that had crushed his life. "Just find me a designer with vision. Someone fresh, bold. The board is getting impatient." He glanced at his watch, oblivious to the storm gathering on his horizon. "Let's go. We can't be late to our own party." The grand ballroom of the Serenity Hotel was a sea of black-tie opulence and glittering masks. Murmurs of business deals and polite gossip floated under the warm glow of crystal chandeliers. Yvonne was in her element, flitting from one influential guest to another, Evan's name a constant refrain on her lips. Then, the ornate double doors opened, and the hush fell over the room. Sylvia entered. She didn't walk. She glided, a spectral figure in white moving through the colorful throng. The fox mask caught the light, its silver accents winking like distant, cold stars. Every eye was drawn to her. A collective, captivated breath held in the air. She was an enigma, her aura a magnetic combination of elegance and raw power that made every other woman in the room, including the brightly dressed Ivan, seem like a pale imitation. Ivan's smile froze, her fingers tightening around the stem of her wine glass. She didn't recognize the face, she couldn't see it, but she felt the shift in power instantly. It was the same effortless superiority Sylvia had always possessed, now amplified 100-fold. A venomous jealousy called in her gut. "Who the hell is that?" she hissed to a nearby acquaintance, her voice tight. Ignoring the stares, Sylvia moved with purpose toward the bar, nor a discreet shadow by her side. Before she could reach it, a body collided with hers. Red wine splashed across the pristine white silk of her sleeve. "Oh my goodness, look what you've done!" Yvonne shrieked, clutching her now empty glass. She pointed a trembling, accusatory finger at her own dress. "This is a limited edition gown from Paris. You've ruined it. It cost me $10 million. The scene was perfectly staged for maximum drama." The crowd murmured, their attention now a focused spotlight. Sylvia looked down at her stained sleeve, then at Ivan's dress, which had miraculously escaped any damage. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm, melodic, and laced with steel, amplified slightly by the acoustics of the mass. "That's impossible. What did you say?" Ivan sputtered, incensed. "I said, that's impossible," Sylvia repeated, her gaze unwavering. "That dress is from Antoine Dubois's full ready-to-wear collection." "I know, because my firm acquired his brand 6 months ago. Its retail price is $30,000, and it is most certainly not a limited edition." She took a deliberate step forward, her presence utterly commanding. "So, I ask you, which is the bigger lie? The price you just quoted, or the feigned accident you just staged?" Ivan's face flushed a blotchy, furious red. Her mask of victimhood shattered, revealing the snarling shrew beneath. The public humiliation was more than she could bear. "You bitch, I don't care what it costs. You're going to pay me $10 million for the insult." She lunged, her manicured nails aimed like claws for Sylvia's mass. But the woman she was attacking was not the fragile girl she had destroyed. With a dancer's grace, Sylvia sidestepped the clumsy assault, causing Yvonne to stumble forward. Before Yvonne could recover, a strong hand gripped Sylvia's arm. "That's enough." The voice was a deep baritone, cold and authoritative. It was a voice that had once whispered promises of love in her ear and now echoed with the clang of a prison door. Evan Winter stood between them, his body shielding a sniveling Yvonne. His eyes, dark and unrecognizing, bored into Sylvia's mass. He saw only a provocateur, a stranger causing a scene. He didn't see the wife he had condemned, the mother of his child. "I don't know who you are," Evan said, his grip tightening on her arm. "But you will apologize to her now." The air in the grand ballroom crackled with anticipation as the final round of the Everest design competition began. Under the glittering chandeliers, two tables were unveiled. On one, a cascade of exquisite rainbow gossamer yarn shimmered, a material so luxurious it drew a collective sigh from the audience. This was for Ivan. On the other, a heap of black, industrial-grade trash bags sat in a dull, crinkling pile. This was for the mysterious Miss White Fox. A smug smile played on Ivan's lips as she glanced at her rival. The woman in the White Fox mask would be humiliated. Evan, watching from the front row, felt the pang of pity for the anonymous designer. The sabotage was blatant, and while he admired her tenacity for making it this far, this was an insurmountable obstacle. He caught Ivan's eye and gave her a subtle, encouraging nod. Her victory was assured. But Miss White Fox didn't falter. She didn't rage or protest. Instead, she picked up a single plastic bag, her gloved fingers testing its texture, its weight. Then, with a fluid grace that defied the ugliness of her material, she began to work. Her scissors sliced through the plastic not with violence, but with surgical precision. The rustle of the bags became a percussive rhythm, a prelude to creation. She pleated, folded, and heat-fused the material, her movements a blur of focused energy. The pile of trash began to morph, taking on an impossible elegance. Evan found himself leaning forward, his brow furrowed. The woman worked with the ferocity of a survivor and the vision of a master. Across the stage, Ivan was knitting her gossamer yarn into a beautiful, but predictable, pastel cocktail dress. It was pretty. It was safe. What was emerging from Miss White Fox's hands was something else entirely. It was a statement. When the time was up, the two creations stood side by side. Ivan's dress was a sweet confection of color. Sylvia's was a marvel of dark architecture, a full-length evening gown, sculpted from the fused plastic, gleamed like polished obsidian under the stage lights. It had the severe, dramatic elegance of a raven's wing, with an iridescent sheen that shifted from deep blue to purple as the model moved. It was a testament to transformation, turning the discarded into the divine. The head judge, a formidable Parisian couturier, tapped his microphone. The creativity, the message of sustainability, the sheer technical skill required to transform refuse into haute couture. The winner is unequivocally Miss White Fox. The ballroom erupted in applause, but Ivan's shriek cut through it all. "Impossible. That's absurd. I was given superior materials. She worked with garbage." Her face, usually a mask of gentle composure, was twisted with disbelief and rage. Evan felt a flush of embarrassment for her public outburst, but a part of him agreed. "How could this happen, madame?" "The decision is final," the judge said, his tone icy. "Your design is lovely, as is art." "She cheated," Ivan accused, a voice trembling as she pointed a manicured finger at Sylvia. "She must have colluded with the staff to swap my materials with hers. I demand an investigation, a rematch." A desperate plea hung in the air, creating a tense silence. Before the judges could respond, a new voice cut in, calm and authoritative. "An investigation is already underway." Sophie Moore, the CEO of the Everest Group, strode onto the stage, her presence commanding immediate respect. Beside her was Noah, Sylvia's trusted assistant. "There was indeed a material swap," Sophie announced, her gaze sweeping over the shocked audience before landing on Ivan. Ivan's face paled. This wasn't going as planned. Noah stepped forward, holding a piece of shimmering fabric, the original rainbow gossamer. This was the material originally assigned to Miss White Fox, he stated clearly. We have surveillance footage of a staff member removing it from her station and replacing it with the plastic bags. Sophie Moore gestured to the wings, and a terrified-looking stagehand was escorted out by security. Mr. Evans, she said, her voice leaving no room for argument. Would you care to explain? The man trembled, avoiding Yvonne's murderous glare. She paid me, he stammered, pulling a credit card from his pocket. Miss Yvonne Vance gave me this and promised me a promotion if I made sure her opponent got the trash bags. He held up the card. It bore Yvonne's name in embossed gold letters. The world seemed to tilt under Evan's feet. He stared at the card, then at Yvonne's ashen face. The irrefutable proof was a physical blow, shattering the 5-year-long reality he had built around this woman. The lies, the manipulations, could everything have been a lie? His gaze shifted to the woman in the white fox mask, who had stood silent and posed through the entire ordeal. It's a lie. He's lying, Yvonne cried, her voice cracking with desperation. She set me up. This nobody in a mask framed me. But her words were hollow, drowned out by the weight of the evidence. The confession, the card, the footage, it was an airtight case. Her carefully crafted image was immolating before the entire industry. Through it all, Sylvia remained perfectly still. Then, she took a slow, deliberate step toward the unraveling Yvonne. Her voice, when she spoke, was not loud, but it cut through the room with chilling precision. Apologize. Yvonne stared at her, aghast. What? You tried to sabotage my career and humiliate me in front of the world, Sylvia said, her voice as cold and sharp as ice. Apologize for it. Publicly. It wasn't a request. It was a command. Cornered, exposed, and utterly defeated, Yvonne began to sob, the sound pathetic and grating, forced by the unyielding silence of the room and Sophie Moore's steady glare. She choked out the words, "I'm sorry." A grim satisfaction settled in Sylvia's chest. But it was incomplete. This was only the beginning. With the entire room watching, entranced, she slowly raised her hands to her face. You know, Yvonne, she said, her voice taking on a familiar cadence that made Yvonne's blood run cold. You didn't just try to sabotage a stranger. She pulled the mask away. The face beneath was older, honed by pain and resolve, but it was unmistakable. Her emerald eyes, blazing with a fire Evan had almost forgotten, found his. The collective gasp of the audience was a whisper against the roaring in his ears. Yvonne stumbled back, a strangled nose escaping her throat. Evan felt the air leave his lungs, his heart seizing in his chest. It was impossible. It was a ghost. Sylvia's lips curved into a smile that held no warmth, only the promise of a reckoning. I'm alive. The world tilted on its axis. For Evan Winter, the grand ballroom of the masquerade, with its glittering chandeliers and sea of masked faces, dissolved into a suffocating, soundless void. There was only her, Sylvia, not a ghost conjured by grief, not a phantom of his guilt, but flesh and blood, standing under the hot glare of the stage lights. Her name was a shard of glass in his throat. Alive, the word was an impossibility, a miracle, and a condemnation all at once. Every cruel word he had ever spoken, every time he had believed the lies, every lonely night he had mourned the woman he'd destroyed, it all crashed down on him. A tidal wave of agonizing truth. He had been wrong, terribly, unforgivably wrong. She's lying. Yvonne's shriek ripped through the stunned silence. Her carefully constructed mask of elegance had shattered, revealing the raw, feral panic beneath. She pointed a trembling, diamond-clad finger at Sylvia. This is a trick. A cruel, insane performance. Sylvia died 5 years ago. I saw the report. Evan, don't listen to this imposter. Her voice was gasoline on a fire, But before the blaze could spread, Noah stepped forward, his presence a calm, steadying force beside Sylvia. He held a tablet, its screen glowing with undeniable facts. An imposter wouldn't have access to Sylvia's original design files, which we've already authenticated, Noah stated, his voice clear and amplified by the microphone. Nor would an imposter be the beneficiary of a $1 million transfer sent to a man named Logan Reed. He swiped the screen, and a bank statement filled the large monitor behind them. A transfer made from an offshore account belonging to you, Ivan. Dated the day after Sylvia's arrest. A collective gasp rippled through the audience. Ivan's face went white. That's forged. It proves nothing. Perhaps this will, Noah continued, unflappable. He swiped again. An online order confirmation appeared for an antique silver dagger, identical to the weapon used in the staged attack. Purchased from a private collector a week before the incident, the payment was routed through a series of shell accounts. But the final shipping confirmation was sent to an IP address, an address that forensics traced directly to your private villa. Ivan. No, Ivan choked out, stumbling back a step. It's Ali. He's lying, is he? Noah's voice was cold steel. Then perhaps we should hear from the man you paid. He nodded toward the side of the stage. Two security guards emerged, and between them was a man with haunted eyes and astute posture, his face a canvas of weary guilt. Logan Reed. Evan's blood ran cold. He remembered this man, the star witness, the victim whose testimony had sealed Sylvia's fate. Logan wouldn't meet his eyes. Instead, he looked at Ivan, his expression a miserable mix of fear and resignation. Tell them, Noah prompted gently. Logan swallowed hard, his voice raspy and broken. Shims. Lauren orchestrated everything. He finally lifted his gaze to Evan, a silent plea for a forgiveness he knew he didn't deserve. She gave me the bank card. She told me what to say, what to do. She coached me on how to make it look like Sylvia attacked me in a jealous rage. She promised me enough money to disappear and start over. As long as Sylvia was gone for good, it was over. Every lie, every meticulously placed stone in the wall Ivan had built around Evan, crumbled to dust. Her face contorted into a mask of pure, unadulterated hatred. The pose was gone. The victimhood was gone. All that remained was the viper, cornered and exposed. Evan finally moved, his body feeling like it was wading through cement. He walked onto the stage, his every step an echo of his past failures. He stopped before Ivan, his shadow falling over her. The fury inside him was a white-hot, silent thing, too vast for shouting. His voice, when it came, was a low, terrifying whisper. Why? Ivan stared at him, her chest heaving. Because I loved you. Because she never deserved you. I gave you everything. I took care of you. I raised your son as my own. She was nothing but a stain on your legacy. Our child, Evan corrected, the words tearing from his soul. You let me believe our child was gone. You let me hate her for it. He looked past Ivan, his gaze finding Sylvia, and the raw, unadulterated agony in his eyes was a confession in itself. He saw not just the woman he loved, but the mother of the child he had lost, the life they could have had, the years stolen by a venomous lie. Security, Evan said, his voice flat and devoid of all emotion. He didn't look at Ivan again. Two uniformed guards moved in, taking Ivan by the arms. Her composure finally snapped completely. Evan, no, you can't do this to me. I did it first. For our family. Evan. Her desperate pleas echoed through the ballroom as she was forcibly escorted away. A disgraced socialite dragged from the pinnacle of her triumph. Her public humiliation was absolute, leaving a ringing silence in her wake. The world came rushing back into focus, and it was just the two of them on a brightly lit stage, surrounded by 1,000 invisible walls of pain and time. Evan's eyes, fixed on Sylvia, were brimming with unchecked tears. He saw the strength in her that he had mistaken for malice, the resilience he had tried to break. The full weight of his cruelty, of his blind, arrogant misjudgment, settled in his heart like a stone. He had not only been deceived, he had been a willing instrument of her suffering. The realization was a quiet, internal devastation. Sylvia took a deep, steadying breath, turning to the panel of judges and the representative from the Everest group. Her voice, unlike his, was firm. "My name has been cleared by the authorities, who have been working with my team for weeks. The charges from 5 years ago have been formally expunged." She looked directly at the Everest representative. "Now, about your offer of a partnership." "I accept." Her words were a declaration of independence. This victory wasn't about him. It was hers. She had caught her way back from the abyss he had thrown her into, not for his forgiveness, but for her own vindication. The formalities concluded in a blur. The crowd began to disperse, murmuring in hushed, excited tones about the scandal of the decade. But Sylvia and Evan remained, an invisible current crackling between them. The past was a shattered mirror at their feet, but the fragments still reflected what they once were. For the first time in 5 years, the truth lay bare between them, raw and painful, but real. As Noah came to her side, ready to shield her from the inevitable press mob, Sylvia's gaze remained on Evan for a moment longer. Then, she turned her focus to the future, to the next piece of her reclaimed life. "Noah," she said, her voice low but determined, her eyes shining with a new, unyielding light. "Let's move on to the next item. I need you to find definitive proof. The proof that Yvonne buried." "Proof of what?" Noah asked, though he already suspected. Sylvia's eyes flickered back to Evan, a flicker of a history he knew nothing about. "Proof that it was me on that cliffside road that night. The one who pulled him from the wreckage of his car. The one who saved his life long before Yvonne ever claimed she did."